So this is some writing I did for my friend here, Giorgio's photo book that was published in Italy. In a sloping back garden, grass edges up to an old rectangular pool. Steps run across the length of a short side, sinking into murky green water. Grapefruits fall, creating a plopping sound. Alligators swim underneath as the fruit bobs in and out of the surface. A heavy red and purple storm looms above the surrounding trees, deciding whether it will break or pass, a shape bred to be gently suffocated. The physical sensation remains, imprinting weather on the double-sidedness of a dream. Then I remember to ask, where are we going? A cobbed field stretches along the highway, next to sun-swept flicker wood with worm-webbed limbs, worms limbering in tents haunting foliage. 4 teens stand barefoot on a bridge. They wave and stare across the reservoir, as if they could choose the mud buried beneath their fingernails. If the dream is the liberation of the spirit, the walk is a physical becoming. Streets embodying the flowing of time, opening layers of pavement, the body reforms with every transgressive step, until finally an open-air skin becomes skin, when before it was phantom or shard. In the dirt of night, I wake in my grandmother's bedroom. I get up and look out the window into the backyard. Figures dance under mammoth oaks, chase each other, weave in between shrubs just beyond the brush at the edge of my vision. Their radiostatic bodies levitate a curved path, never indicating the exact loudness between the room and garden. Textures rush down the throat, sounds ooze, filling the mouth, plural eye in a shadowless sun. The unwritten memo for the next millennium, imprinted on the backs of eyelids. Staying still, the day holds its shape. After being stretched beyond measure, stretched the most it has in 100 years. Then comes the refrain. Water refracting turns the grapefruit into a dozen suns, peeking through now quickly moving clouds. The distinction between dreams and walks becomes harder to define. Aren't they both a kind of fecady, unique and completely singular in each iteration? Defining their boundary is a thin line of perception, a decision between what's delineated as voluntary and involuntary sensation. The feeling is similar, a pre-cinematic suspension, like grapefruit bobbing on the surface of a pool, physically connecting water and sky beyond reflection. At twilight, the luminous move away from us. The gaze becomes soft. As the visible world leaves the eye, everything near becomes far, unresolving the day. Orange gets sucked from the sky. Is that loud enough? Should I talk louder? Louder?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
The louder if you want
Get louder if you want. Okay, I wrote this one in the past 2 days. It's just called Possible Poem. Rose, first-time bud, my friend and neighbor, thorn under folded hands and white-edged clouds, resting on a sharp-looking announcement. The whole world in procession, no faces, no floating objects, a pillowcase song, soft rattle, beyond call, survey map of the location early on. What is the total life number? No longer the epicenter that circles the globe, we are the far-off place. How strange the word's ability to float when lost. Some thoughts ask to be understood more than others, their paths formed by talking. Stars exalt the darkening sky. Mysteriously, stars continue to exalt the darkening sky, Stephanie wrote, and I thought about that for years. Found reverence in the expanding distance, sat on the floor in a collection of dust and was reminded of my destination. Looked at flickering clusters and thought about burning, how it can illuminate but also blister. Ultraviolet cream as I retrace the contours of the room. Gentle spitting from the ceiling, pile of moonlight on the floor, lavender corner coasting. John once said in a text message, a shadow is simply an absence of brighter light, but how desirable such an absence. Okay, and this next part is a small section from a longer essay that was published in Text Circumstance Perspectives last spring. Angelic void. In the angelic void, there are no opposites. The void can hold all forms. Emptiness is absolved, and angels' earthly shapes transform. Angels know divisions are pattern knots to simply untie. They defy ordering truths to unravel new openings. Fences fall to meadows, flowers no longer need to turn toward the sun. All things can be drawn together in the softness of chaos. Angels enter where there is no room. They see the vast image, as in not valid on birth certificates or state documents. They flutter past errors and limitations, as in filling the space that is perceived non-space between male and female, as in declaration, not legally binding. The angelic void of intersex is heavenly discharge. Okay. Seeing is overripe. I patiently await its decay. Leave all the apples of ways of seeing to mulch, enrich some new seeing that hasn't been perceived yet. Seeing doesn't mean what it used to. Unname it, look past the figure, the ground, and return to the floor. I keep picturing the Earth's shadow, the blue line on the horizon at dusk, gently stretching into space. Things align so seldom that we make new constellations, trace them on our palms and call it power, bewilderingly of light in shadowy places. Seeing is a cloud slow blinking eye drawn in the earth, stories of in-between spaces, ways of being, how to find it everywhere free. Seeing doesn't produce what it used to. There are no fixed images to articulate the cosmic in flesh. The eclipse writes, night two is also a sun. Okay, I wrote this one on my birthday one year. Cicadas timbrels. As the bus pulls away, colors bloom into the sun in memory of dog days. A foam swell broke, swooped down screaming, draw time, the part in the middle bashfully tucked away. Sprinkler trios blink, grass exhales, tinge golden steam of afternoon heat, a phenomena that can only happen with an audience. Cicadas' timbrels call for dusk, ask, how can you resist such a passionate plea? Last week I became the oldest I've ever been in faded magenta windshield of a parked car. Okay, I wrote this one when I was in the Mojave on residence at Andreas Hotels AZ West. An internal clock for the desert, footprinted and unchanging, time stretches out. Noisy quail wander through the wash in pairs, tortoise move a little ways. Birds murmur, muscles loosen. In deja vu, the mind searches increases. A desynchronization of sensory signals creates an illusion of reliving. Reverberated seeing, a perceptual double take. What does it mean to believe that you've seen something before in a place with no images? On screens, images act as barriers, mountains of digital dust to navigate, zigzag. Screenless, is it possible to see yourself here? I'm thinking about the absurdity of sweeping the desert, of buzzing sand, of never-ending backlit, shimmery mirages outlining the impossibility of understanding. Eyes becoming false horizons while shadows in the wash provide the only place to rest. Here, there are no buildings, no clocks, no monuments. Instead, our eyes focus on the overwhelming abundance of limited materials, their texture, their interaction with light, their relationship to the sky. It makes me wonder about the tactility of being, how, in exercising all of our senses, we become embedded in the world. We often limit ourselves to sight. In the morning, obedient knees kneel on shoulders fruiting, tiny flowers reach, touching slow honey blood. Okay. Clam in the wild. What does it mean for a clam to be in the wild? Count necks, little necks, top necks, cherry stones, quail You said in a text message there are some very beautiful videos of clams floating along in the ocean. I'm thinking about how the Narragansett used quail as wampum, decorative beads of purple and white carved and made precious through human touch. I keep thinking about a clam drifting in sea foam, becoming a symbol, a gesture, a memory aid, a tool in spoken language only to be monetized. Is it possible to be in the wild? Is the wildness only present internally, in the hidden activity of the clam, unknowable until split apart? Work on the pearl begins as a defense against an irritant. Every pearl comes into being as the activity of the clam's work against death. The pearl is the accretion of time and persistence, an incidental aesthetic work of survival. Clusters, masses, cornices, tooths, modillions, a bed of clams blurring into architectural space. The arcade is a bivalve space, a hinge space, which is interior and exterior. Forms jutting out into one another, tiny crevices, paths, and support systems. The last arcade space. How can I talk about the ornamentation when I walked indoors to an outside space only to be standing next to a ping pong table, now looking into a restaurant? I can't stop thinking about the fact that objects and language pearl into being through time and concentration, making the intangible legible through action. Pearling. What is the exchange of material, of language? There's a floating point that exists within language where word becomes fluid. It wiggles. Echoes of earlier and other senses of a term. The incidental lives of syllables formed and reforming, making language move. You can't consciously put yourself in wildness, but you can push towards it. How a discarded bag of chips blowing down the street is also a pearl. I wrote this poem for a show that I did in Casey and Meg's backyard in Queens. They used to live in this place with 100 edible plants. It was their permaculture garden. And that's how I know Jaden, who I just met recently. Annis Hyssop. Pocket was a field. Orangey pink folded into green wrinkle, yellow perforation, dusky pale corrugation. Hands touch or hands kiss, touching every single finger. Gust, mist, whir, hum, curl, trash can sweating, turned on by a subway sign. Red and white and barricaded. I could steal that plant, but I'm not going to. Verticalister, inflorescent, fall swirl, what used to be smoke, absorbing, fuzzy endeavor. Laurel, as time passes, the green becomes brighter. Clouds spin. Memories swarm like flies, waxing at twilight. A woman actually said she was going to steal Casey's plant from his front yard, but decided not to. That's where that came from. Okay, I just wrote this also, like, in the past few days. My mother was a very devout Italian Catholic. This is for Cecilia after Bernadette Mayer's Utopia. There's a Catholic church in Midtown where priests wait around all morning long, and some all afternoon too, to be picked up by whores for the purposes of sex. Some whores keep a group of priests in an abbey and sell them to churchgoers. They found a way, these churchgoers, to inject them with a poison which causes their penises to swell up to monstrous proportions. It's odd that this is still going on. Often people say it could never end. Some of the priests are actually sold to whores as servants, and they work at keeping the house clean, doing the shopping, taking the children to school, and in their spare time do arts and crafts like sewing, weaving, poetry, and even art. But they have no way of earning a living. They're just dependent on the whores, who have acquired them, who perhaps love them, perhaps not. The whores sometimes put on strange ceremonies and taunt the priests, whispering in their ears, "I'm the only Holy Father. Kneel and receive the sacrament. Release the statement of the faithful." In Midtown Manhattan, the priests are forced to always maintain an erection under their tent-like clothing, or pose constantly for ads for God with their cute asses hanging out. Many groups are working to eradicate these inequities, but some people say the priests are meant to be subservient, and their ability to be like the whores would destroy the structure of society, and also render sex and going to church uninteresting. There are myths in which the priests are thought to have caused the entire downfall of the human race through a combination of their stinking, dirty genitals and their penchant for aggressiveness and wars. The whores continue to forgive their sins and keep them. Recently, a great whore, a venerable whore, the mother of all whores, died and was canonized at this church. Saint Cecilia. She turned bread into perfectly shaped tits, levitated many cocks, and cured the priest's STIs with the wave of her hand. Swoosh. She performed more miracles than any other saint in her lifetime. She immaculately conceived and mothered hundreds of children. There's a hushed idea going around that the church is being renamed after her, and Big Papa, the Pope himself, will be presiding over the Mass to rename it St. Cecilia's Church. I don't know if any of these things are true, but they are told as if they were. Okay, I have two more. This one is by Palestinian poet Fadwa Taqin. Enough for me. Enough for me to die on her earth, be buried in her, to melt and vanish into her soil, then sprout forth as a flower played with by a child from my country. Enough for me to remain in my country's embrace, to be in her close as a handful of dust, a sprig of grass, a flower. Okay, and one last little one. Winter's lassitude breaks, and we are touched with the energy of renewal that the new season brings. Thank you.